Hey, and welcome to another LooseKeys podcast. I'm Brad Chmielewski, and I'm joined by Jake Williams and Ethan Barnowski. What's up, guys?
Hey, what's going on?
Ethan, it's good to have you here. It's been a while since you left us, and we've been doing this solo.
It feels good to be back with the old crew.
We couldn't do one more podcast as a two-man show. It just wasn't allowed.
I know
we had other stuff to talk about.
Well, we're already talking about cartoons every week, and now we're just talking about animation or other animation. It was just getting redundant, right?
Yeah, at a certain point, we're talking to each other, and we're like, let's just ask Ethan questions.
But on this episode or this podcast, we wanted to talk about GIFs, and so that felt like the perfect reason to get you back on here, Ethan. And because you've been doing a lot of GIFs. You were doing a lot of GIFs beforehand when you were at LooseKeys. So yeah, it's a great topic. I don't know where we want to jump in with GIFs. Like, we don't need to explain GIFs to people. We don't need to let them know what they are. But Jake, you and I were talking this morning about like the format of them and how like just crappy they are. Like the compression crappiness, not like what they are, just like this old school technology for making GIFs.
Yeah, I want to start first though with, when I think of GIFs, I always remember there was a Chicago MoGraph meetup. I think it was around Christmas time. I remember it being cold. We did it at Rock Bottom Brewery. And I don't know if you were there for this one or not, Ethan, but you were obviously doing the GIF stuff at that point. But someone, I don't remember who this guy was, went on a tirade talking about how he hated GIFs, like everything about the world of GIFs. If a client asks me to do one more GIF, like it just, when I think of GIFs now, I think of there are animators out there, there are artists out there who are like, this sucks.
Yeah, and I'll say if I was there, I would fight that guy because I love GIFs. No, I do really like GIFs, so it is funny that there's people that are like have like a hateful passion towards it.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I guess as for the medium, what Brad and I were kind of talking about actually earlier this morning was basically like, in the last few years, it's been, I don't know, 4 or 5 years or something. It feels like suddenly it's become the go-to like way of communicating in a weird way. My wife and I do it quite a bit, where we like send a link and then the reaction back is like, I sent a GIF of some celebrity reacting a certain way, or and you contextualize that with like, pick a show that or pick a pick like a movie you like or something like that. But now it seems like it's crossed over into art as well, and you see a lot of different artists, MoGraph artists in particular, animating just little bite-sized bits of animation. And then I guess there's also the whole advertising part of it too, which is like taking a clip of a video you've finished and just making that a GIF so that you can share just that piece elsewhere. But maybe that's a different story.
Yeah, it's just super easy to share and communicate through. So it's a fun like medium for artists and just in general, like communicating with like weird, puppy loops or whatever it's going to be.
But it seems like the communication or the back and forth between people really exploded when Giphy got integrated into Twitter and Facebook. Before, what everyone was just going on the internet, copying a link to a GIF and pasting it. Like, you almost forget how time consuming and how much trouble that was. Like, let me download that to my phone and then I'll upload it to this message and attach it, and we're good to go.
And some people's phones wouldn't play GIFs.
Right.
So you send it to your friend and it was the wrong still of the emotion you were trying to capture. Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I think, I guess before we get more into the art and animation, I think it's decent. You did bring up Giphy. Like, that seems to be the main hub these days. People know that brand as a site to go to find GIFs or anything, because it acts as a huge database. And I think originally people were super excited by the idea of like, oh, look, an actual like well put together site where I can find GIFs versus just searching the internet.
Yeah.
And I know that, Ethan, you've had a bunch of opportunities through Giphy, like with the artist page stuff. And then they also seem to sometimes in the business side of motion design actually reach out to artists to participate in actual client jobs. Like, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience with that?
Yeah, well, a couple of years ago, I reached out to them and I said, how do I become like a featured artist? Like I make GIFs. It's really like easy to post. So is it like, how do you do that? And at the time it was just like a referral thing. Like you just basically had to email them and they set up an account for me and gave me like a password or whatever. And I just started putting my stuff up on there. And then through their attribution and through my like GIFs just circulating, I was getting contacted by a lot of different like random people asking for like, I like this thing you made. Can you make something similar? Like random companies would do that, or it would be through Giphy. Giphy would contact me saying like, hey, like this bigger client like McDonald's or whatever wants to work through us to produce GIFs. So we're asking a bunch of different artists if they want to contribute and be commissioned to do that or whatever. So it's been really cool for just spreading my work around and stuff, and like using Giphy as a marketing tool basically. Like it's like really simple and easy and fun. Like, and that's like, you don't get paid per GIF or anything like that, which a lot of artists like will complain about, but I don't see it as like the place you're making money off of that. Like you're posting your art as basically marketing for what you can do and what you do. So yeah, I like Giphy.
And we should mention too, these opportunities you've had, these aren't contests. These are reaching out for the opportunity. You don't have to do it for free, basically.
Right. No, it's legitimate, like commissions, like actual work.
So that's good to know. I think I agree with you in that in the artist community, like especially like in the bubble that is Twitter, like it's become a thing where I've known artists who took their stuff off of it because they didn't like the rights or the usage that Giphy actually has when you sign up for it. There have been other artists claiming that Giphy basically took a bunch of their work and made them a profile and didn't ask. And I don't really know the details of that stuff, but I look at it, I guess, as a like meat and potatoes kind of like it's another platform. It's another shot to take at finding at a client, maybe seeing your work kind of thing. And if I'm I would rather spend the time making my next GIF, making my next animation, my next piece of art, than I would worrying about hunting down like who stole my GIF, who used it, whatever. Like it's gonna happen. I feel like I know your numbers are crazy, Ethan, but like I've seen a GIF did for LooseKeys when we did some hand turkeys of like a rock. He was like a rocker guy and had like a mohawk. That thing has millions and millions of views. I don't know what article it got used in or something that it got those views, but like I guess I'm not mad that I like somehow I'm not benefiting off of that. It was the tiniest thing.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, that would be like Steven Spielberg complaining that like someone in China's bootlegging his movie on DVD or whatever, like ranting about it on Twitter. Like obviously the stakes are a little different. There's a lot more money that goes into that stuff, but like it's the same thing. Like it's gonna get stolen and it's gonna get used, and like you're still gonna get a lot of credit where credit is due by using their platform and stuff.
There's often if you're so worried about like your stuff getting stolen or taken, then it's like, why are you putting anything out there? And then why are you making anything at all? Like we live in this time where you can screenshot, you can download, you can steal everything anytime you want. So it's really hard to, if you're that concerned about it all the time, like then don't make anything.
Yeah.
Here's your options. Put the big dumb bad looking Comic Sans watermark over it with your name on it, or don't make digital art. Like I don't know. Like those are really.
But even if you put the watermark on it, then you got people who are they're competent enough artists that are just gonna copy it, trace over it, and remake it. So you can't win, right?
Yeah, I think where it gets tricky and like upsetting is when if you do find your work being like duplicated and used and someone else is making money off of it or something. Like sure, that's really like wrong and you should be upset about that, but like something like Giphy, I don't see it as a problem.
Yeah, that's often where people get upset about is like either someone wrote a blog post or it's about McDonald's or it's about like a big brand and they decide to just use a GIF they found to put in their article or mention their product, and they didn't commission someone to make something for it. The argument is they kind of got free advertising, but if it was another blog that no one saw, then no one saw it and no one got upset about it. Just the fact that it's a big enough brand with the eyeballs and the pockets to pay someone to do it.
Yeah, right. And like because of integration in Twitter and whatever else, like people don't think about like the artist, because so many GIFs are made. Like you can make it right on Giphy's site or whatever, where you just like upload a video and then it turns into a GIF. So like nobody's really thinking about like the artist whose intention is to put it on there and like showcase their work and stuff, because it's also just this huge database of like reactions and like celebrities, you know,
TV show clips, movies.
Yeah, so like, and it's completely integrated in Twitter and like tons of different apps. So people aren't thinking like, oh wait, this artist might be upset if I use it. And so marketing, social media managers or whatever at different companies, like they should probably know better, but at the same time, like they can get away with just like posting random stuff on Twitter because it's just content. I don't know. I can see how that like flips through, but
yeah. And we should mention too, this isn't like, we are talking about Giphy obviously, but like this is not a Giphy exclusive thing with attribution. Remember a few years ago, Instagram was suddenly like, if you post it here, Bud Light could come along and just, since it's on our website, they could ask to use your photo or something like that, and you wouldn't have any permission. I don't quite remember what the rules ended up being because of that, but this is not a Giphy exclusive thing. They are just the biggest fish in the pond, so they're very easy to target for this, I think.
The attribution thing is actually really funny with Giphy, because I've made a bunch of different GIFs that can be applicable to different like reactions and things like that, and then so really random ones that I've made will just blow up, and I don't know why, and then I'll realize that it's because it's like integrated with Tinder or something. Like I made a GIF that was like two people, like a couple in bed, like looking over at each other and then pulling the covers over their head, and that was the whole thing. And it's like the top GIF, like it has the most loops out of anything that I've made. I was like, why is that? And then someone was like, well, it's probably because Tinder and Giphy is integrated together, and people just like use that in this chat. Like, and other people have been like, yeah, someone sent me your GIF to hit on me the other day. I'm like, oh, well, good. I hope it works.
Yeah, I think it sounds like you look at it the right way, Ethan, is that at least the way that we share too, which is like Giphy is an opportunity platform. It's another chance to get opportunities through clients or commissions or whatever it might be. And that can lead down the road to like, don't use that exclusively as your portfolio. There are many other shots you should be taking on Twitter or in your portfolio and whatever. But also like a client will come along someday, or should, if your work is good and it is something that goes viral or they like your style, and they might ask you to commission you to do 10 to do a series of social media posts or something.
Right. And Giphy is not just like taking everyone's artwork and, putting in these platforms and not hiring people to do other stuff. You've done stickers, and Giphy's asked you to do other things, right, Ethan, that they've paid you for.
Yeah. They'll contact me and actually like commission me to make a set of GIFs for them on top of what I'm just posting there for my own benefit. So yeah, and the whole like them scrubbing websites and taking people's work and setting up accounts and stuff, like that sounds like a very like mean bad guy thing to do, but like, and that is wrong if that's like what's happening, but I'm pretty sure it's just it's like their computer algorithms that are like setting up accounts. It's not like there's some guy like like this artist doesn't have an account, like let's take his stuff and ruin his own business or whatever. Like I think it's just because you can post anything, people can upload whatever they want to the site, that like it's getting on there and circulating.
Can you make a GIF of that guy doing that for Giphy? Scrape. He's just like, he's shoveling all the GIFs into his shirt. His shirt's like rolled up, like taking extra crackers or something.
Now I'll make tens of hundreds of dollars.
Hundreds, I swear. Go ahead, Brett.
So like stepping back off of our like Giphy rant and whatnot, to go back to just like the GIFs, when you had first started at LooseKeys, Ethan, you'd like decided to make a GIF every week. Like what drew you to that like format or that I guess style of making something every week? Like what was the reason for the GIF versus an Instagram video or a drawing or something like that?
Well, I mean, it was definitely not like a marketing thing or a money making scheme. It was just like I really wanted to like, number one, like I wanted to do something different. Like I wanted to like push myself every week to do something, like to be moving forward and trying out a different style. And so originally the idea was like, I'll try a different style or technique with short animation every week, and it'll be beer themed, like for this set. That's what I did for like the first year that I did it. And so it was just trying to like make sure I was always doing something, and like doing a personal project that I like thought was just fun, that I wanted to try out like a different animation technique. And that was kind of the whole point the whole way through, but it sort of shifted over time from being like, I want to try different animation techniques, and like I want to see if I can do like a run cycle of someone running towards me, and I'll apply that to some beer related thing. Or I want to do like I want to have this head do a complete flip. I've never like tried flipping someone's head around and see how hard that is. Like it went from that to being more like refining a style, and basing it more on illustration towards the end, and then just like, I guess I should animate this too. But yeah, mainly it was just because it's a fun, really short, quick medium that is great for animation. So
yeah, I definitely think something that's cool about your GIFs too is that along with sort of the new dribblization of design and these sort of things, I always think of like we put these things on these nice little platforms. At least in your GIF art, Ethan, I feel like you don't do that necessarily, and that's good. I think it's like you don't just like set this tiny little scene, like you use the whole bounding box, that everything you need to help tell whatever mini story you need to. I think it's pretty common in these like grab the attention thumbnails of like us trying to share our work to do exactly what I do all the time, which is like a little shadow and the guy's in the center and like that's where he sits. Like I could go into detail of like how I like plan these things out, but like setting a little like diorama scene in my GIFs or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to do that, but because like the format is super limiting, like you were kind of alluding to earlier, it's like it's a really terrible format. Like it's most platforms can't play like really heavy GIFs, and heavy GIFs is like over 2 megabytes, so it's still really small by video standards. But like, so you have to, it gets compressed really low, and so you need to have a limited color palette, and you can't have like too much action happening, or it can't be too long. So all of these things kind of contributed to the style that I have for my GIFs. And I'd love to ask about your new GIF project, Jake. Like, seems like you're doing a similar thing with limited color palettes and stuff. And how has that been working with that format?
It's been good. Like I will say the time schedule, now I'm understanding what you went through doing one a week, because by the time you post it on a Thursday, you're on Saturday or Sunday, you're like, oh, I got to come up with a word like now so I can get the art ready so that Wednesday night I can animate, that kind of stuff. And I think I've taken the sort of the concept so far has been like, what is a single word like reaction or exclamation that these weird characters that I could make could have, and then what's a situation I could put them in that does that, right?
Yeah.
The limited color palette came about because the very first GIF I made, I think the week after you had left to go freelance, I just did a finger pressing a button that said BRB, and I just made it all one color, and then I just stuck with that, so that helps keep the size down. I also, like, if people paid any close attention at all, like I had animated grain in the first few, which is a huge no-no because that's
right.
There's a lot going on there. So I've knocked it down to instead a grain cycle that I'll put on like 1 or 2 background elements, but I used to put it on like 5 or 6 things. And suddenly I have to save these 2000 by 2000 GIFs that look nice when they're full size down to like 300 by 300. And I'm like, well, this sucks. Now you can't even see the detail, and the grain gets lost to the quality. So it's it's kind of interesting. But yeah, I think limiting yourself to one or two colors, like in my case, it's one and white basically, definitely helps get the size down. But if you try to tell a long story, I think story is an interesting thing in GIFs too, is like, how can you tell a loop that can happen again, that maybe you can keep the punchline like until the end of the GIF and also mask the loop where it happens, and how long does it take for that to develop to get your like comedic timing? In my case, I like to make them funny, but to get it to be funny at the right time, but then you realize like, dude, it's 12 seconds. This is going to be way too big.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, I think basically just every single, all of my favorite GIFs that I've made are all have a little story in there, and trying to knock that down to a couple of seconds is always the most challenging and the most satisfying part, when you can make it work and it looks good and you can compress it down and it's like technically looks good, and like all those things combined, it's really satisfying.
Yeah, it's kind of weird how to approach any of that stuff. I know also too, we worked on a bunch of projects together where we started doing a lot of posterized time to knock things down to 12 frames per second. With the weekly GIFs I've been doing, I just animate them at 12. I was like, well, there's no reason to cut this out. This will already keep it smaller. And if it's the weird, like, I don't know, low fidelity style that I guess I'm going for, that these characters aren't like fully articulate, you know, when his legs move, it's just a bump, 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 bump. It's just like kind of, you know, things like that. So it's one of those cool things where you always heard when, you know, we were all trying to get into motion design or something, a lot of tips were like, if you know, people complain they didn't have software or plugins or whatever it was. And a tip I always heard was like, if you have limitations, if you limit yourself to say, I don't have cinema, so how can I figure out how to do it here or whatever? You actually tend to be more, I'll say just more creative. That's not quite the word I'm going for. Resourceful, I guess, right? You figure out different ways to solve your problems. And I think Giphy is GIFs are a weird, almost like problem solving medium. Like, how can I tell this story with XYZ limitations? Because there are many. Yeah,
totally. And I noticed that on some of your, some of these GIFs that you've been working on, like you're doing a lot of like cool classic animation techniques for the walk cycles, like you're saying, like just like, you know, like the legs kind of just like shifting, and all these things that I think traditionally animators did to limit, like they had to limit themselves because of time and money and stuff like that. Like it looks really cool, and it's like a cool style that you've been sort of playing with in different ways, and all these different all the GIFs that you've been working on.
So they limited in time and money, and we limited in megabytes.
I guess so, yeah.
Frames.
But it's a great thing, like you said, limitation. Jake, like the Grayscale Gorilla 5-second project, I know they were bringing that back, and these GIFs you guys are both doing are very short, and so the GIF format almost works better for their like 5-second project now, if you think about it that way, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I know the Grayscale Gorilla guys, I think we're rebooting that, or maybe it's already back. It'd be interesting to see if most people submit it as GIFs now, because a lot of people they used to like to do sound design with them too. That's the other thing I've been trying to figure out is like, if you post it on Instagram, you can post it, loop it a couple of times and add your own sound design, and it kind of adds to it. But then sharing it elsewhere as just a GIF, you have to send people to Instagram, which feels annoying. Like it feels like you should just be able to have the sound accompany. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you have a run time or a plan for your little style you're doing, Jake? Do you going to keep going till you run out of words and situations for these guys?
I feel like Ethan could probably relate to this. I've got like a handful of words in the hopper that I'm like, okay, I got a good concept. I just got to think through it. But, you know, no more than 5 or 6. Like it's every week I come up with a different one. Last week's was going to be great. And then I came up with the idea that made me laugh more. Like I think of my GIFs as like vines, where there's a weird, stupid, abrupt punchline at the end and they make me laugh. And that's what keeps me going, I think.
Yeah, well, eventually you can like circle back to, you know, like you'll just have these ideas ready to go, and then you'll usually be inspired by something completely new, like the day before you start. Like that's been my experience usually. So then there's a week when you're like, oh man, like I really want to keep up my streak, but I don't have any new ideas, so I'll just do this other one that I've been putting off.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's always good. And I think sticking with the style when Ethan did the beer gifts and the steak gifts especially were cool. Like having a large library of one thing, even if it's maybe not the most popular thing. And by that I mean like doing steak gifts isn't necessarily going to get the most shares on social media or something. But to have this giant pool of a series that you could look at all together, that's pretty fun. I think having like a body of work like that's good. So I think I'm only at like 6 or 7 now, so I definitely have to keep going with this new style for a little bit.
Yeah.
Nice, yeah, and I don't see the format going away anytime soon. It just seems like it keeps growing and growing, and we're seeing like basically TV shows and cartoons are especially writing themselves for these GIFs and these memes, and they're made to be shared like this. So, yeah, I think adding to it as far as animation and shows and things like that is just going to keep growing until everyone gets sick of the format.
Yeah, it'd be
Yeah.
interesting to hear from people working in cartoons because I feel like you've had that theory for a little while, Brad, that modern cartoons sometimes there's a moment that feels like it's a little bit separated and like a line was spoken or like the action or the pose is in such a way that I'm like, I feel like you made this to be shared.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially like a lot of the cartoons we watch, especially the modern ones, you're like, oh yeah, that line was just to basically someone to add some text over it and share on Dribble or on Tumblr or Twitter or something. That'd be interesting. Cool. Well, you guys are making me want to start my own GIF series now. Jeez, I don't know.
You
I mean,
should.
yeah, dude, it's super fun, but I'll say it's definitely more time consuming, obviously.
Mhm.
I just finished up a basketball GIF this morning and I've let it sit. It's been blocked out. The animation's been blocked for a couple weeks. And I finally got around to like not designing other stuff to be like, okay, I do need to like finish this thing at some point. I also think it's a neat way. I've been like slowly looking at, we've had some recent style frames or concepts for vehicles that didn't get used. And I was like, yeah, but this would be really fun to animate. So I'm putting together like a small GIF of a couple of these to be like, oh, well, we can bring this to some life and it still helps in the same way of putting it on Giphy or something you're advertising for look what we can do or look at this fun stuff we're working on. I think GIFs, I don't know, just making it like helps bring life to stuff. So yeah, you should do it.
Yeah. I will say that like I did it for like over 3 years, and then I recently just decided like I'll take a little break until I have an idea for a new series or whatever. And I've been working on a short film instead, like trying to take the amount of time I put into GIFs every week to do that instead. But because it's just one thing that I'm working on, it's like very it's not satisfying. It's not instant gratification in the same way, or semi-instant gratification in the same way that GIFs are. Like GIFs, like every week, it's just this short thing that I can put together. I can try out a new style or character or whatever design, like color palette, whatever I'm like wanting to kind of experiment with this week, with that week, and then put it out there and it's done, and then I have something completed, and it's like really, it's just like satisfying to have something done and new and refreshing every single week. But because I haven't been doing that, it's like, oh, I'm so sick of working on this like same project over and over again. So yeah, I think I definitely miss it. Like I need to get back into doing that.
Well, maybe that's one last thing to tackle here too. Is I've always wondered, you know, it's really cool to get the likes. It's really cool to have people comment on your work and at least like be kind of your champion or cheer for you to kind of do this stuff. But is it a good long-term like employable skill or like a skill that a client would hire you for? Clearly there is a business around micro content like GIFs, but like you're saying, you feel like now you have to stretch yourself to suddenly like, oh, I can't just like say I'm done with this. Like telling a longer, maybe more thought out, deep story might be hard in a world of like, I've been making 6-second animations for 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, from a technical standpoint of like the actual creation, it's definitely a very different thing, and like, but I do think that GIFs show a range because you're doing something different every single week and trying out a different technique or whatever. Like you're not caught up in one style or whatever you want to say. So it definitely like, as far as showcasing your breadth of work, that I think that's like pretty cool, like to have so many different things. The short film is just one thing that I don't know. It's kind of like, I guess it would be like whittling something out of wood versus out of marble. Like,
Right.
like, they take different skills.
Well, also that one thing you want to be like amazing, where the GIFs, you want them to be good, but at week number 50, the GIF number 2 is meaningless, right? Like it's still there, but you don't have as much like I don't know, opinion on it anymore. You'd still maybe like it, but that one movie you did or that one animation you did, and now you're doing another one 3 months later, you're like, well, I hope everyone still loves that one I did previously.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you do a series of GIFs, it all serves the bigger piece. And so if you look at a short film or whatever as like each shot is its own GIF in that sense, and like, yeah, I mean, by the end of it, you probably are like, oh, those first couple shots I did suck. Like, or I don't care about them. Like, maybe you need to redo that.
Yeah, I guess you could think of GIFs, and this isn't a hard and fast rule, but fail fast, fail often, right? It's like try a thing, try an experiment, get it out there in 6 to 10 seconds or whatever it might be. And if it doesn't work, don't revisit it. But if it does work, keep practicing it, keep refining it to get to the point of someone who I consider a success story in terms of that is like Ethan developed a style because he decided to do these things, and it went through many themes, states, beer, words, whatever. But you got to like practice and be like, well, maybe I didn't like something about this one, so I'll try something different the next week. Versus getting all the way through a short film and then realizing like, oh, I hate all of this. Like, why didn't I develop any skills before this?
Yeah, definitely a different outcome and different skill set that you're honing in on. But yeah, I think GIFs are really good for like experimenting, trying new things. So I would recommend it to everybody to do often.
Cool. Well, I think that's a good spot to wrap up the conversation. Then do GIFs more often.
I can't wait to. The title of this episode is just "Do GIFs."
Do GIFs.
Just do GIFs.
Well, you know we're gonna get some hate for us calling it GIFs and not GIFs. So
yeah, we should have addressed that up front.
We're already in trouble.
Well, Ethan,
right, here's what I say to the haters out there that have been cringing throughout this entire thing, thinking that they're right and we're wrong. You are wrong, because it stands for graphic interchange format. Graphic, you don't call it graphic interchange format. So that's where I come at it. But the argument on the other side is that the founder pronounced it GIF. So
well,
he was wrong. And
I also call the tablets Wacom tablets, and it's really Wacom. So
yeah, I do too. Maybe we got it wrong.
Listen, everybody, don't listen to our jest this week. Our jest on this podcast doesn't know what he's talking about.
Our jest.
Yeah, I mean, people probably call them GIFs.
Is that why? You think that's one reason why people start just calling them loops? Like, oh, check out my loop.
Probably.
Oh yeah. Had you heard of this, Ethan? I've never heard of them called loops.
Well, I think Vine called their things loops.
Oh, true.
And then I noticed actually on Giphy, their like measurement, like per play is, they call it a loop. So
Oh, okay. Interesting.
maybe it's just like being taken on, just called loops.
Well, as the artist who agonizes over making sure the last frame is the one right before the next frame so that it does perfectly loop, I don't consider them all loops at all.
All right, there we go. Well, Ethan, thanks for taking some time and joining us on this episode.
Yeah,
thanks, man.
Mm-hmm. And if you have any thoughts or things you want to hear us chat about animation, more about GIFs, loops, GIFs, whatever you call them, let us GIFs. Leave us a comment, let us know, and we'll be back with another episode soon. Take care.